Hey everyone, Cody Hayes here, and I'd like to welcome you to this lecture where we are looking at bioethics, life ethics. In this case, we're going to be looking at euthanasia, and we're going to be looking, of course, at some terms related to euthanasia and also arguments for and against the practice of euthanasia, mercy killing. So, kind of starting off with some terms and forms of euthanasia, might as well begin with the word itself. Well, the basic definition is killing an individual or allowing him or her to die on grounds of mercy. Well, that's the basic definition of euthanasia, mercy killing, where somebody is suffering from some particular ailment, and basically that person, whether he or she is actively involved or inactively involved, we'll look at that later, but basically their life comes to an end, and it's done on grounds of mercy. Well, here are some of the forms related to euthanasia. Have active euthanasia. Well, this would be actively, hence that word, being involved in a person's death, such as giving the individual a lethal injection. So, essentially here, with active euthanasia, you would have an individual who is suffering and wants to die, and you give that person a shot of lethal injection which ends their life and, in this perspective, ends their suffering. In other terms, what's called passive euthanasia. Well, this is indirectly being involved in a person's death, such as removing an individual's life support system. So, with this particular practice, you have someone, for example, who's alive, according to at least you could say the biological definition of life, but their life is really being sustained by a machine. And, are they really alive? We'll look at this particular topic later. And a person decides, to remove that life support system or whatever the device is that's keeping the person alive, and then nature itself takes over and the person dies. Another term to know, voluntary euthanasia. This is where an individual consents to dying. There are some states which allow assisted suicide, euthanasia, and essentially it's done where the person himself or herself is at a machine and they're hooked up with basically the lethal injection that will end their life. But before that injection is given to them, they have to answer a series of questions. And if they answer all of them with yes, and in fact, with one of the programs that I saw with this, the question of, yes is asked multiple times just to make sure that they don't potentially change their mind. But if they answer yes, then of course the injection is given and they are, they will die. But that again would be their doing. They voluntarily decided to end their life. They consented, said, I don't want to be here anymore. For whatever reason, whatever they're suffering from, I want to die. Then another term is non-voluntary euthanasia. And this is where an individual has not expressed a desire to die, or his or her feelings on the subject matter are unknown. And let me have a quick sip of water, and I'll give, an example of something that I do remember, with a case like this. Someone that I knew a number of years ago, this person suffered a brain aneurysm and essentially collapsed. This person was taken to the hospital and was hooked up, to a machine. And that machine was basically keeping this person alive. But the doctors stated that this person is not going to come out of this. So one of the family members finally decided remove the machine and, let the person die. In this case, it would be, a ground of mercy, euthanasia. But what did that individual think about such an act? Well, because unless, there was documentation from said person, we don't know. So, in this case, somebody else is making the decision. Another term, involuntary euthanasia. Well, in this case, an individual has stated that he or she does not want to be euthanized. So here we know in terms of the situation. As previously mentioned, unlike the non-voluntary euthanasia where the subject matter is unknown, what the person, would want to do in this case, here a person has stated that he or she does not want to be euthanized. So you have either some form of documentation or, some record And then there's the question, okay, if this is involuntary euthanasia and the person is being euthanized, why would that happen? The only answer that I could give would be somebody declaring it to be for this person's own good. And obviously that would cause a lot of controversy in the world of ethics. So, let's look here at some of the arguments that are made in favor of euthanasia. Well, one is the Libertarian Principle. Well, if an individual wants to die, he or she should have the right to take his or her life. And the root word here, libertarian, liberty, freedom, that if a person wants to die, he or she should have that right, because liberty, freedom. Person says, I don't want to be here anymore. Okay. You have the right then to end your life. Well, we'll stop here, and then when we come back, we'll look at some of the arguments that, are also made in favor of euthanasia. And then we'll also look at some of the arguments that are made against the practice of euthanasia. So, take care. I will symbolically see you then.